I'm here today with our second of the series of Witan 2022 interviews on YouTube with the one and only Alexander Adams. How are you today?
I'm very well, Maven. Thank you very much for asking me on.
No problem at all. Now, you were a speaker last year, so a few people that are listening to this will know who you are, and some others might be aware from your other activities around the interweb. But do you want to give people a rundown on who you are, what do you do?
Yeah, my name's Alexander Adams. I'm an art critic, poet, and artist. I've been in these circles for a few years now. I've written a lot of art criticism. I've written 3 books. One was Culture War, second one was Iconoclasm. The third one, which will be published in a couple of weeks in the beginning of August, is called Artism, The Battle for Museums in the Era of Postmodernism. Some people will know me from appearances on GB News or on the art streams with Pharaoh and Panama Hat.
Yes, I did see your latest GB News appearance. I found a clip of it on YouTube eventually. So are you enjoying speaking to the boomers like this, or you prefer speaking to the more interesting audiences?
Yes, the spicy crowd. Well, I enjoy speaking to both of them. As I said in my speech last year, there's the monastery, the Benedictine monastery, which is sort of preserving our culture and the great minds who are going to sort of lead to the Renaissance in the future. But I see myself as the floodplain, which is protecting the walls of the monastery. So I'm out there with Lotus Eaters and New Culture Forum. I'm out there sort of widening the perspectives of normies and perhaps sort of introducing them to some more based ideas. And I think that's an essential thing because not least it keeps the Overton window slightly wider than it would otherwise be. It also distracts the people who are hostile towards us, and it does provide a source of income because I think it directs more normies towards watching live streams and contributing to magazines and buying books and so forth, which I think is an essential way of building a dissident economy.
No, fantastic. Have you noticed much success with that last point where you say you're bringing people into the more dissident online sphere? Have you noticed much of that yourself, or?
Yes, I think so. I think that I've introduced a lot of people to ideas like sort of like elite theory. I mean, in the new book, I discuss elite theory, which obviously I was introduced to by Academic Agent on his channel, and he's recently written The Populist Delusion, which is a very good guide to that. And I've been incorporating that, and that's into my ideas. And it's a lot of people have sort of mentioned, "Oh, I never realised that what this was, or how this might apply to culture." So I found that it's been introducing some new people to those ideas. In terms of money, I don't know. I mean, I'm selling books and I get articles published. I think that it does contribute to people moving over and taking a look at these new ideas, and possibly ending up sort of giving super chats or paying for a Substack subscription. Oh, by the way, I'm also newly on Substack at Alexander Adams Art.
Very good. We'll make sure to put a few of your links in the description as well. So it's always good to bring in new people and to, as you say, keep the Overton window for the normies just that slightly wider than it otherwise would be, because the Overton window can be extremely stifling. If you've seen any of the debates online going around the latest Tory leadership election at the moment, it's kind of wow, it's awful. It's just awful.
It's a glimpse into our dystopian future, I'm afraid. Yes.
Well, you were at the event last year, and since you've decided to speak again, I assume you enjoyed it.
Yes, I think it was an absolutely fantastic event. I had such a great time. So I had a chance to speak, but also to listen to sort of really top speakers, exciting people. And Panama Hat gave just a fantastic speech. It was so eloquent. The only word he choked on was the word atheist. I thought that was so symbolic. And we had lots of laugh with Unpopular Opinions Live. the famous smashing of was it the Tupperware box, and there were some really interesting debates and lots of stuff going on because we could socialize and so forth. And yes, I had an absolutely terrific time, and I feel extremely honored that you've invited me to speak again.
No, well, we thought you added a lot to the event last year, so we're happy to bring you in this year, and hopefully you add a similar level of knowledge and variety as well. We've tried to make the speakers, fairly broad. We don't want to be everyone just be talking about the same set of ideas. I think one of the benefits, and perhaps you would agree with this yourself, is when we're all there in person and we have so many different talks coming at the same topic from a variety of different angles. It really helps get the conversation surrounding those talks to be very interesting, productive. So
because you'll be talking to one person about talking to Clumber about sort of streaming on Austro-Hungarian history, and then you're talking to Evelyn about something, and then AA's to talk about rap or wrestling. Anyway, there's more interesting stuff than that going on.
Absolutely. So you mentioned you have a book that's about to be published.
This is Artivism, the battle for museums in the era of postmodernism. I'm basically looking at it's a step beyond mere culture wars, although it talks about how woke culture sort of infected institutions. Now, of course, you can go to sort of GB News for that sort of thing. You don't need to come to sort of more dissident spheres to hear that sort of thing. But what I do is I discuss it in terms of elite theory, why the elite might be taking up artivism, which is a combination of art and activism, or activism through art, and how, for example, certain NGOs and funding organizations are the ones that sponsor things like color revolutions in the Middle East and North Africa, how you have artivist organizations which are campaigning for mass migration into Europe. I've never yet discovered an artivist organization which campaigns against mass migration. It's very interesting that all the artivism seems to be going one way and all the funds seem to be going one way. So Artivism is a book which sort of brings together many strands: the woke culture wars, the disintegration of high culture, elite theory, and also looking at the nexus of funding organizations which make this possible.
So the elites using their money and philanthropy into art to change the culture or to inculcate certain behaviors in the populace is not new in a way. The Victorians did this, but they were trying mostly to do things like get the population a bit more sober or instill better morality. Let's say so something changed there to make them all go within this open borders, postmodern crazy direction. So what do you put that down to?
I would say I think it's what happened. I mean, you had like a general sort of paternalism of the Victorians, wish to sort of educate the common man, to sort of spread ennobling ideas and beauty and so forth. And this was very much what Ruskin was interested. I mean, if you ever listen to a Pharaoh stream, he'll go on about Ruskin. But I think what's happened is you've lost that layer of connoisseurs and historians and, without wishing to be rude, sort of really narrowly focused autists who were running museums and were thinking in terms of ideas and objects. And they were not thinking in terms of communities or outreach. They were absolutely obsessive about getting to know which painting was by which person and what the subject was and what the symbolism was. And then you would communicate that to people, and people would come in and learn from you, from these savants, as it were. But what's happened now is that you've had a whole new wave of basically the feminization of arts organizations and cultural organizations. So you have this new layer coming in, and it's all about sort of touchy-feely stuff, and it's to do with communities and outreach and social justice and eco-activism. And so they are replacing both literally by coming in at the top, but also replacing, generationally speaking, all the sort of hard-nosed, idea-focused, object-based historians and curators who were mainly men. And this new wave of women administrators has allowed the madness of social justice and eco-activism to pervade museums in a way that just wasn't possible before, simply because you just didn't have women in those positions of power. Women and feminized men, I should say.
You're sounding dangerously close to John Dee there with all your woman blaming.
Well, yes. Well, you know, I'll be careful what I say, but yeah, I should imagine there'll be some sort of forthcoming article on Substack behind a paywall on that subject.
Okay, very interesting. But so why did the men, or the autistic men, let's say, or the obsessive, those who are really determined to keep the arts pure, why did they vacate these positions, or were they forced out?
It's a combination. It's been forced out due to sort of quotas, because essentially you have the Arts Council of England and the DCMS, the Department of Culture, basically say, oh, we need to be more diverse, you need to have more women. Of course, you look at the actual statistics of how many women there are in management roles in culture, and you'll see that they actually dominate it. They're actually the majority now, but it's going to carry on this, because there's obviously an intention to create a monoculture. So there is this deliberate drive to push it in. And then there's also the sort of, I think there's the natural impetus to think that, oh, women are hard done by and they don't get a fair opportunity. So sort of people who hire and trustees and so forth, they want to do their bit, not realizing that actually, if you take a global view of the situation, actually women are already far ahead. And then, of course, I think the third thing is just generational thing. More women studying art history, and also to do with like sort of local government management, because a lot of the people who are going into management now they're professional managers. They're not historians. They're not art historians. And so they're replacing the older, more object-focused men who are just simply aging out. They're retiring.
I'm not someone who is particularly visually artistic. I like my music, but when it comes to visual arts, which is your speciality, then I'm a bit of a pleb, let's say. And so in school, most of the people I knew who were into the visual arts were all women, and I think the most men I knew thought in a very similar way. So is this a generational thing we're talking about, or has there always been a more interest of women in these arts, and they're just now dominating because they have been able to, because of feminism?
I think what happens is that I think that generally it's considered a female cultural sphere, because women are the main consumers and they are often the main commissioners, because they are also often in charge of the decoration of a house and the interior of a house. So they don't make the money, but they get to spend the money, or they get at least to influence what money is spent on decoration. And quite frankly, much art is bought for decorative purposes. So it's no wonder that women play an outsized role in buying, collecting, and promoting art. However, I think that the best artists, certainly the most active artists, the ones who've led movements, the ones who've been most innovative, or considered the most exemplary upholders of tradition, have been men. So I think that men are the leading creators, but women are the majority consumers.
Okay, is this we've just described basically the broad thesis of your book, and I'm sure there's many details which may be worth reading for when people buy it. But is that what your talk is going to be on as well, or are you going to be focusing on something slightly different?
Yes, well, the subject of this Witan will be sort of praxis and theory. So my talk is going to be about whether or not a reactionary can have praxis, because if you're a traditionalist, you would say your praxis is tradition, and I think that praxis kind of suggests the application of an untested theory, whereas a traditionalist would say we are following an established tradition which we know that works. We are not innovating, whereas praxis is to do with innovation. So I have to kind of square this and see if my thesis is solid. And whether or not there can be such thing as reactionary praxis. Certainly, there's certainly things that reactionaries and traditionalists should be doing, and they should be doing more of, which I'll be talking about. But whether or not we can call that praxis is something else. I don't know. I should imagine there'll be people who will be speaking just after me who will completely demolish my ideas without meaning to and without knowing. But that's one of the delights of being at these events where you speak and then you're followed by stuff that you really don't expect, and it completely undermines everything you do.
Well, hopefully you won't be completely undermined.
Not well. Okay, maybe there'll be a few tasty morsels or a couple of nice lines that survive.
Oh, absolutely. So when you're saying can you have a dissident or reactionary praxis, and I assume you're talking mostly around the cultural artistic sphere again. So is this not the same question, or a very similar question of how do you make right-wing art in the modern times?
Yes. Yeah, and how would you describe right wing as opposed to just simply not conservative or traditional?
Yes.
I mean, there's been a lot of discussion on AA's channel and Ferro's channel about what is reactionary art. I think also Geo as well. He's been discussing it on his YouTube channel. This question of reactionaries, political reactionaries, who are also artistic modernists. So people like Ezra Pound, the young T.S. Eliot, Wyndham Lewis as an artist and as a thinker, all quite innovative technically, but soundly reactionary in politics. I think that's a problem that we have in our sphere, because we have the traditionalists say, the return to tradition crowd who are saying, like sort of draw the line at 1900 and we're not going to go any further. And then you've got sort of like reactionaries saying, oh yes, but we can use memes to to undermine the current authorities, the current status quo. So I think that this is a definite broad church, because you have such conflicting views. And I am kind of divided. I have sort of divided loyalties. I can see both sides, both as a sort of practitioner and as an observer.
So as a practitioner, you're more of a modernist, I believe.
Yeah, I'm certainly. You'd look at my work and think you would know that I was working in the late 20th century and early 21st century. Yeah, I think that. Whereas I think my poetry, because I'm also a poet, when I write poetry, I think people will read it and think, oh, this is very much sort of 1940s, 1950s sort of Larkin-esque poetry, following Philip Larkin. And yes, and this has actually been one of the recent projects that I've been working on. Is an anthology of verse published it's the first book by Bournebrook Press. And it's going to be an anthology of verse from not just reactionaries. I mean, there's a couple of there's a liberal in there, and I think a lefty as well. But basically, just looking.
You sure you want a lefty?
Oh, he's a good chap. He's a friend of mine. He's okay. So we've got this. This is an anthology of verse, including quite a wide range of people. But it's definitely looking at tradition and resting on tradition and thinking about what it means to be English now. And it's and also looking back to history and saying, is there some sort of deep time, some deep history that carries over from the past that we can look into today. So that's a collection of poems called Sunken Island, which should be available for sale at the event.
Yes, it's a good tie-in, actually. We will have Bournebrook magazine or Bournebrook Press. Are you going to be calling them now if they're doing more than just magazine?
I guess they're going to be. Well, they're going to be both. So there'll be copies of the magazine and there'll be copies of the book as well. Yeah.
So they'll be there at the event. There'll be a couple of representatives selling magazine subscriptions. This new book, which sounds very interesting, and we'll have a few other things as well. And you mentioned poetry, so we're in discussions to exactly how we can incorporate some interesting poetry at the moment. We haven't quite finalized that yet, so we'll announce that formally elsewhere. But if you're interested in poetry, then there should be something for you. Let's just say that.
Yeah, and Panama Hat, one of our poets and a noted poet in this area, is going to be talking as well, I think.
Panama Hat will be talking. He's a published poet. I know AA has written poetry. Mulbug's written poetry. There's
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah.
There's one of the other speakers, Rupert August. He writes some. So there'll be a number of people who have done poems, and we're seeing how many of them might be interested in doing something together.
Yeah, and maybe the year after you'll be branching out into art as well, and you know,
maybe
because I think that there really is. I mean, whether or not it's through Scyldings or another organisation, I think there'd be real appetite for a sort of. I've talked before about like a sort of a reactionary Eisteddfod, and Eisteddfod is it's an arts cultural event. It's a sort of gathering of the clan. It comes from Welsh. And so that has different features. It has sort of recited poetry and written poetry and art and sculpture and so forth. So also musical performances. So I feel like there would be a great hunger and an appetite for this sort of thing, to see more artists who are sort of not explicitly political, but just saying that they are dissidents and that they don't fit in. And in many ways, many of us have been expelled from the sort of the state art system anyway. So we're looking for a home, and I think there's appetite for our work. So even if it's not at one of your events, I think, you know, there could be other events that could function in a more cultural sphere. But you're bridging this boundary between politics and culture very well at the moment.
Well, yeah, we're trying to bridge the boundary between politics, culture, and theory, and all sorts of things. You know, it's a very broad church conference, and the idea is partly is to get lots of these good minds, whether they're speakers or attendees, because the quality of attendees we had last year was I must say, very high.
It was amazing. I met some really fantastic people.
Yes.
And some of them weren't even speaking. They were in the audience, and I was thinking, wow. You know, if only you had time to fit in this guy, or you know, whatever.
Exactly. So the idea is to bring all these people together under the same roof, and lots of ideas then will spring forth. And we've had something. I was mentioning to you off stream that I was meant to be. I can't now for annoying reasons, but I was meant to be in Soho tomorrow for a dissident right, essentially, or I wouldn't call it dissident right necessarily, but certainly a dissident club night in Soho, which has been happening once a month for over the summer. So, you know, all sorts of things have been created as a result of all these people coming together.
Oh yes, no, I would recommend people to get involved in the so-called basket weaving, which is basically sort of, you know, groups of like-minded people engaging in all sorts of activities, mainly sort of cultural activities, social activities. You know, going out to museums. I went to meet the London basket weavers, and we went around a gallery, and then went for a curry afterwards, which was fantastic fun. And you know, I met some of those chaps at the first event. So I think that this is a great way of sort of networking, not just in sort of a career sense, but also in a social sense.
Absolutely. I was fencing recently for some basket weavers, and a bit before that, I went camping with some of us. So. Yeah, there's all sorts of really good networking, just general friendship making opportunities as well. So
yeah,
yes, it's really good. Do you have anything else to mention? I want to bring up what are you working on at the moment apart from this book, finishing touches?
Well, working on other books. There will be yet more books. I mean, so yeah, I will be bringing with me copies of Artism, but I've also recently published a book on Degas, the Impressionist painter, and there will also be a book on René Magritte, the Surrealist, appearing. That's from a big press, so you know, you get nice production values, and it's really cheap. It's just £10. So that's coming out in September, and lots of other things as well. I'm also reaching the final stages of Foundations of Aesthetics, which is a very large course. We're hoping to offer it in 2 different forms: Foundations of Aesthetics Advanced and Essentials. So what, you know, one's going to be the full course, the other one's going to be a sort of reduced course, so much shorter, slightly more direct, so sort of less complex language and stuff. And that should be available through the academic agency, hopefully by the time the event happens. So I'm just editing it now, and I have to record the audio.
Well, you sound like a very busy man.
Yes, almost as busy as you organising this event.
Oh no, please. It's now we know what to do from last year. It's been a lot smoother sailing. So
you've streamlined your system, as it were.
Streamlined a lot because last year we didn't really know what to expect, and this year we do. So we've been able to put a bit more time into the things which matter and don't worry about the things which don't.
And I believe, are you doing a book this year?
We are doing a book this year, so the book's available for purchase on the website again. So if you enjoyed the book last year, then make sure to check this one out as well.
Yes, so read. Anyone who can't attend can buy the book and can pick out all the faults in my arguments. Because obviously my text will be my speech text will be part of that book.
And we've been able to make the book slightly cheaper than last year as well.
Oh,
so it might be worth looking at for that reason alone. Okay, well, thank you very much, Alexander. I'll put lots of links to everything you do in the description, and we'll see you in August.
Looking forward to it.
Great, thank you.